Welcome to the Credit and Collection News podcast. We are lucky enough today to have Larry Parks with us. And Larry has spoken at a lot of other Credit and Collection News shows. And he is so gracious to come on board with us today to talk about what's going on in the world, what's going on in the economy, and elections matter. And one of the things that Larry is definitely an expert on is predicting elections and kind of how it's going to affect the economy and stuff like that. So Larry is the CEO and founder of Forethought Advisors. He's always been in advocacy of lobbying and doing strategic corporate solutions. His firm is helping establish everything in the financial service arena. Prior to that, Larry was also the senior vice president of external and legislative affairs for the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. He works with Congress. He's worked with the administrations and the institutions and kind of holding everything together. Larry helped establish the FHLB as an industry thought leader, bringing in the needs of the banks and communities. Larry has spoken, like I said, at a lot of our shows. And back in late 2015, Larry came to our show, and this is his expertise. Sat in front of a group of creditors and collection industry experts and said that all the numbers were telling him that Trump was going to beat Clinton in the presidential election. And remember, this was in September. So this is before anybody else actually was even thinking that. And of course, a lot of people didn't even think that till after November. And even after that, they didn't want to think that. So Larry showed his expertise, showed his expertise in being able to look at the numbers and to be able to pull stuff out of there that a lot of people missed. So he's been speaking at our shows ever since. And he's definitely an expert, and we're honored to have him here. So with that, I will turn this over to you, Larry, and we'll talk a little bit about the economy and what's going on and how elections do matter to everybody.
Thank you, Steve. I mean, I think you're really great to have this for your membership in large measure because people sometimes in business forget that politics actually really matters too and can control the environment in which they operate. And what you do, I think, is not only bring people to DC, but also give them a sense of how DC is working so they know how to fit in and kind of push the envelope towards your industry by understanding what they actually do in Washington, as opposed to, sort of separate stovepipes where I think you often get in trouble. So thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to launch in real quick. To do 2024, you've got to understand 2022 and the midterm election. If you remember at this time last year, the conventional wisdom was going to be a red wave. A couple of days before the election, that we are early November now, and that the red wave was going to mean that the Democrats would definitely lose the House by a significant number of seats. They would probably lose the Senate, and that Biden's agenda had been failing. Well, what happened? You normally lose 27 seats in your midterm. Trump lost 41, Obama lost 61 in the midterm. So it's not like we hadn't had big numbers with each of the presidents. And the president's job approval rating was low. For Biden, but it didn't happen, I think, for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, we can't underestimate abortion in the Supreme Court. That motivated a whole constituency of white women, suburban white women who may have been on the fence a little bit more. I think Republicans lacking an economic platform. I think they ran anti-Biden, but they didn't tell people what they were going to do for them. Pro-business and anti-regulation, which used to be the Reagan rally cry for 40 years, isn't working with the key constituents that they need. I think there was an underestimation by the media of the popularity of the Democratic programs. I mean, the pro-labor jobs, prevailing wages in non-unionized states is a big deal for construction workers. And sort of core working class people in this country, that they saw monies going up and going in their pockets. I think that only gets enhanced now with the UAW strike settlement. Environment and energy in the IRA bill, the IRA bill silenced critics in the Democratic Party. So normally you get a split in the midterms, where either the right wing on the Republican side with Trump or the left wing on the Democratic side with Biden, with Obama, says we're mad. You haven't done our agenda, and we're going to stay home. So that sort of shrinks the electorate. That didn't happen this time because Biden kind of in the IRA kind of got the environmentalists a huge part of their agenda. So they weren't out here meow-mowing as they normally would be. The other thing is putting money in working class people's pockets. The first that Biden stimulus check that gets many people think caused a significant amount of inflation meant something to people. The child tax credit meant something to people. And then the other sleeper issue, which nobody predicted, decrease in inflation starting in August. So inflation had been, really high and it was really coming down. So that being a lightning rod issue kind of changed. And then the last thing, what we're learning in more elections than anything else, if I can leave your viewers with anything, is the last weekend of the election, Halloween weekend, around that seems to be the determining factor in how elections are going to turn out in these close states. Who has the momentum at that time? In 2016, Trump got it. In 2020, we were in pandemic mode. And so Biden had to hold on, but Trump was coming back. In 2022, the Democrats had a surge that last weekend in places like Pennsylvania, in places like Michigan. And so I think that dynamic is going to be an interesting one for 2024. So just politics aside, when you look at 2024, which I know everybody's going to look at, I think economic, not social issues will rule the day.
Well, when you talk about, and I don't want to take away your presentation because I think you're going to jump right into it when you talk about you said it last, I think it was in fact, a couple of your last presentations, you said there are always like three things that can suddenly change an election. And if you looked at it like right now, there are huge things that can swing an election one way or another. And of course, now we just had Halloween. So you're beginning to sit there and say, we're starting early. And how does this affect? But you have you have the war in Ukraine, you've got the war in Israel and Gaza. And then you just had this whole debacle with, you had a House Speaker and then the House Speaker got booted. And then, you couldn't get another House Speaker. Are those the three things that suddenly can swing an election one way or another, that you're kind of looking at and saying, wow, that's what did it? And that, those are uncontrollable factors, yet how do you do it? I mean, obviously you're looking at Michigan as a swing state, and you have a large Muslim population in Michigan that is saying, if you don't do this, we're not going to vote for you. And then you have a Jewish population that says, and if you don't do the opposite, we're not going to vote for you. Good. How do you manage that? Or do you end up losing both parties or both groups to the one party that suddenly the other party comes in and says, I get to take advantage of that. And we're still a year out. So again, not trying to take away your steam or anything on a particular one, but obviously that's just one instance where a swing state can, let's face it, if Michigan is one of 4 or 5 swing states and suddenly you get a large population on both sides in the one party, does that throw the whole election, sideways? And then I turn it back over to you because now I just threw a whole bunch of stuff. I was like, hey, let's talk about that.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's early to talk about the three things because we'll be doing that next year at this time if you guys want me. But right now, if we were forecasting, we would look at the three things that are big. I mean, you've got the Ukraine war, you've got the speaker debacle, and then you've got the Israeli Hamas situation, right? And so if you look at each one, sure, they could swing things. And my feeling is it comes down to the economics. Americans are pretty much isolationists, in these issues. So if it's over there, yeah, we'll show some interest, but it's over there. If it comes here, very different dynamic. It can come from 2 different ways. It could be military, but it also could be gas prices. One of the things we don't like to talk about is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict could lead to a large embargo dynamic with many of the Arab countries or price hikes, right? And gas, if that comes in, it ripples through our economy, inflation happens, people are mad they either can't get gas or it costs too much. And so they get angry that you didn't handle that problem and you caused us to have this problem. So I think that's a sleeper issue that really underlies the Arab-Israeli conflict right now. I think your micro issue around Michigan is very important. Michigan having such a large Arab community, which is unusual for concentration purposes, will be different. It has a decent sized Jewish community. It also has the dynamics around the UAW strike, where people are actually getting more money in their pocket by that time. So you've got all these dynamics that are sort of going to play out. Exactly. I always go with the money. I'm sorry. I always think that that's who we are as a people.
Oh, yeah, well, why not? We're Americans. That's, we know how the world works.
Yeah. Are we making a bigger or smaller paycheck? Are we paying taxes for stuff we believe in or paying too much in taxes we don't believe in? And do we believe the other guy's agenda is going to make me have more money in my pocket 4 years from now? I mean, that's kind of at the core of a lot of our voters. Now, abortion proved to be a very different dynamic. That was a social issue that really took on enormous weight. And I think we can't ignore that. I don't see another social issue coming out of that magnitude. I think it'll still have effect. The Arab-Israeli conflict, I mean, as far as Arabs and the Jewish community, an ugly dynamic for both parties, right? If you raise it in political terms. I mean, I think Donald Trump is trying to play this better than most. Quite frankly, because he's mad at Netanyahu. So he's like trying not to be as pro-Israeli, but at the same time trying to show this weird dynamic with the Palestinian versus Hamas, right? So can he make a differentiation? I think Biden has no choice but to be pro-Israeli. No choice. Right. Not only where the Democrats get their funding from, but it's sort of like the historical perspective that the country has already taken. And so we'll see, does the country separate the Israeli conflict from Netanyahu, who they may have issues with, but that shouldn't be the dominant force of how you see the Israeli dynamic at play, right? Right. So we'll watch all that unfold. But I think it's really the economics that's going to play more than anything else. If it doesn't, prices don't go up, it probably will have less of an impact. If prices do go up, it will have a significant impact. If you look at the growth rate that we had in 2022 and where we are now, U.S. economy was growing about 2.1% in 2022. In second quarter was 2.4%. Third quarter went to 4.9%. I don't think it'll stay that high, but these positive growth numbers above 2% will help Biden. I think I always give you sleeper issues. So in 2016, in 2012, I was very concerned. I wanted to see how Catholic female voters voted on the healthcare issue. Was abortion more important or healthcare? Because they were going to be the key voters in places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, those states. In 2016, it was working class, unionized white guys in Michigan, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania. People who felt that NAFTA had betrayed them and that their party had not looked out for them. And they were the sleeper issue. In 2020, because of the pandemic, we probably didn't have as many dominant issues, but what Joe Biden did successfully was return to the unionized white guys that Trump had not delivered for you, and I will. So let's focus on 2024. Who's likely to be that group? I think one of the sleeper groups is going to be is whether you get apathy in the Black community, particularly the Black male community. And with that, has Joe Biden done enough? He wasn't able to do the voting rights, which will not help people in the South. But in that industrial Midwest, where the Black vote is very important, the question will be, did they benefit from Bidenomics or not? Did they get jobs with these new industries or not? The Black unemployment rate as of October is at 5.8%. The non-Black unemployment rate is at 3.9%. That 2-point gap is much lower than historical averages. And normally, if this were a normal sequence of events, the Black unemployment rate would be closer to 8%. Because it's normally double the white unemployment rate. So there's been some penetration and particularly wage growth. So if that continues, that will help reduce apathy. I think putting money in people's pocket and where inflation is going to help them with the white working class community, depending on where inflation is. Inflation is now at 3.7%, 3.9%. People can kind of live with that. I mean, they wanted to get to 2, but now young people who were key to the election, are they going to view that what he got done in student loans is sufficient or that he didn't deliver? Question mark. The next question is, if I want to buy a home, interest rates are sky high for what I've seen historically. Now, for those of us in our age group, Steve, even though you're Still only 40. We remember when interest rates were a lot higher than 7.9%.
You just lost your credibility on that.
But you're the portrait of Dorian Gray, so we're going to go
there. Okay, I'll go with that.
Okay, so if you think about it, will interest rates not being able to buy a house be an issue for young people? So you've got some issues that line up against Biden. Question marks around student loans, question marks around interest rates. Jobs are plentiful. Are they the jobs they want? I just think the other thing that's really out there for this election cycle, it's early. It's just early. I think I would look at, is Biden able to sell a future agenda, and what will the Republican future agenda be? The election is about what happened and what they project will happen. If Biden sells the Build Back Better bill that he didn't get done, which had the care economy jobs, which was really about elderly care and about child care. It was about, a massive housing program to do away with homelessness by doing project-based assistance in housing. It was about lowering prescription drugs beyond just diabetes drugs and letting the federal government negotiate. If you put that kind of agenda on the table and say, look, it lost by 2 votes in the Senate because Manchin didn't want to do it in the Senate, and it passed the House. So clearly that's a starting point. If you beat on that sufficiently, you cover a lot of groups. Right. Now, the Republicans are still grappling with what the agenda will be. And it's always hard when you're the out party. But if they go for the deregulation tax cut world, that's not going to be sufficient. They've got to embrace Trump populism. The reason why Trump won was because he brought another constituency to the Republican Party, working class folks that were not from the South. Because he said NAFTA was wrong, but I'm not going to go after your Social Security. I'm not going after Medicare, right? I'm not cutting your benefits. And I'm going to use the power of the presidency to go after China and make plants be built here. So he gave people a feeling of hope. The Republican establishment has never been comfortable with that agenda. And so it's going to be very interesting if they understand that that's how they got in power. It was not the Reagan tax cut, pro-business, no regulation agenda. So watching this new speaker is going to be very interesting. Trump got a huge win in this new speaker. This is a Trump guy.
Right. Well, and it makes sense. I mean, he can relate to the common person. I know that especially when you look at someone, from our industry, from the credit and collections world, here's a guy that is not a huge fundraiser. Who, I mean, the reports that are coming out now are saying this guy, quote, lives almost paycheck to paycheck. He doesn't have a lot of money saved. He doesn't have a huge house. He doesn't have a bit, that's a lot of people can relate to that, especially in this economy, because, houses are hard to afford and all that stuff. So is that like you said, is that a big win? Will that make a difference a year from now? That I don't know, who knows? Well, you probably do, but everybody else doesn't. So again, not going to take away from your, your fire here, but that to me seems like it's something that people will look at and say, I can relate to this guy. You might not believe in everything in, but if he's in the same financial situation, as opposed to a lot of folks that have been in DC a long time, that seem to have a lot more money than what their salary should say they have. And that's, I think everybody from outside the Beltway looks in and scratches their head and says, wait a minute, how come you are making X amount of dollars, yet you seem to have millions in your bank account? Can I relate to that? Or is that the person I want representing me, when I certainly don't have that? So again, it's just a thought.
That's a very good thought. I think that whole but the question becomes, populism can go 2 ways. It can either go, I hate you because you're rich, right? He's the guy who's representing me. Or it can go, I'm going to get after the rich and make sure they actually produce something for me, right? And what Trump did, because he's rich, he took away the I hate the rich. He did I want to produce something for you, because basically I got rich after having you people have money. You get money, you go to my casinos, you spend it. You take your money, you know what I mean? Right. So I have a vested interest in you having money.
Right. So I can look at it both ways. And hey, if, like you said, they can look at it very positively right now, but it doesn't really matter because you're not voting until Halloween next year.
Exactly.
So, what are you going to do for me between now and then?
Yeah.
That makes me love you, or makes me, I'm going to vote against you because of that.
Well, that's a really good point. So when you look at that, Biden's a brilliant legislator, right? So he got 3 bills passed before the midterm. 3 big, huge bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these bills basically are starting to roll out the proceeds now for the next year. So you have these tech hubs, you had these hydrogen hubs. So you're starting to see, as opposed to conceptually, you're starting to see places that are going to benefit from a massive federal investment in new industry. Now, controlling the narrative about that will be interesting, right? As far as how does this affect regular people? But unlike in the past, and this hasn't happened since LBJ, the federal government is actually sitting at the table with industry saying, we're going to give you money if you go take some risk. Now, the quid pro quo is you got to have unionized jobs with prevailing wages. You got to deal with minority contracting and women. But we're paying for it. But in return, we're giving you an equity play that you wouldn't normally have, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is going to be really interesting to say, does this benefit people in time for next year? Right? Because you're going to have a whole new set of industries. I mean, that, for people in our age group, what this means is we're giving our children, nieces, nephews a future, right? There's a new industry. And that's a huge deal. Are you going to package it well to be able to sell it? I don't know. Industry is in a new position with government. Quite frankly, the foundation community that normally funds the Democrats and sort of explains their agenda, Biden kind of leapfrogs them with this agenda. So they're not as prepared as they normally are. This is a white time on how you get that message out. But I honestly believe, and I know this is really weird, and this is the whole, why I believe in democracy thing. Biden wouldn't have done that agenda if Trump hadn't tried to do it first. Trump saw some stuff that was going on, and the Democrats got embarrassed that they became the party of the elites, the party of only the 2-degreed, that many of these people had been from working class families. And they were elected Amy Klobuchar, we can go through the list. And they were horrified that they were seen as the party that didn't care about regular people. And so, as opposed to Mau-Mauing it, Biden got in there and said, I am Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and we're going to do this right now. We're going to take the risk. And the Europeans, as you know, in your industry, you follow the global world, are going nuts because they've never seen the United States invest in industry. And they're like, oh my God, they're going to beat us in the race on environmental issues and energy issues. Now, in this country, we don't see it that way necessarily. We're like, what the heck is he doing? But overseas, they're saying, oh my God, he's really going to make America dominant for another 50 years with another industry. Now, our poor Congress is doing nothing but investigations about Joe Biden and not getting anything done on the House side. That was before Speaker change. And our poor Senate on the Democratic side hasn't done much either. I mean, they've done a little bit of work around AI now, but they're like stepping in, they're putting a toe in the water. I mean, like, we got to deal with this. I mean, Elon Musk just said, look, all jobs are vulnerable. This may eliminate all jobs in the economy. Could be done by AI at some point. And then what are we going to do to make sure people have something to do and have money? That's kind of the job of Congress, to be looking at that long term. And we got neither party spending time on that. And in your industry, obviously, they come at you first. You're in the first basket of where AI could have a huge impact.
Right.
And we really need to think about positions that we take industry-wide in that area. I mean, to not just preserve jobs, but the nuances of what you do cannot just be done by an algorithm. When somebody's being a bad actor and when somebody's not. You know when somebody can do a workout and when they can't. You know when you've got to fold the towel. You know when you've got to actually go hard. Those are all judgment calls.
Right.
And to have that sort of wiped away or not included or not be cost effective because of an AI algorithm is a problem for the consumer that they supposedly care about. Not only your industry, but the consumer in general. I think we got to really think about those kind of things going into the next cycle because they're out there, right? And it's just, the other thing we got to think about is if we stay in a high interest rate environment for a while, if the Fed doesn't drop interest rates, I mean, do we begin to subsidize capital for consumers? Do we allow this to ride for a number of years? Do we build out the non-banking sector taking on this level of high risk and then have a takeout for them with the Fed when things go south? I don't know, because this one is sort of meandering along as if this is all going to be temporary. And then we're going to go back to the low interest rate environment that made credit cheap and free.
Right. Yeah.
Big issue.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely, it's one of those things when you talk about, is housing affordable or unaffordable? And, when suddenly everybody's used to the 2% mortgage, and now it's an 8% mortgage and what's it going to be? 10%, 12%, if it goes in that direction, there's nobody that can afford a house. And that makes it tough. I know the younger generation, which I'm not part of, but they're looking at things, and we look at things for our kids and say, can our kids afford property? And the answer is at this point, probably not, because the value of homes is so crazily high. And at interest rates at 2%, sure, but at interest rates at 8%, no. And then anything above that, certainly not. So that's a thing. So if you are if you're a young voter, how do you vote along those lines? Or do you vote because, do you go back to the apathy of like, well, I can't afford it and I just got to do my own thing. And then you lose interest in the, it's not a social issue, it's a financial issue. And do young people vote on that? And I don't know, especially a year from now, will they vote? Will they not vote?
That's exactly right. I think, if you're a betting person today, it all depends on how Joe Biden packages what he's delivering on the street. So to your young people vote, am I encouraging you to go into environmental and energy? And am I providing apprenticeships? And I'm providing a ladder in? And are there really new businesses being formed in this area? Or is it large corporations? Okay, because they got to have the capital, but are they going to employ new people? And is there a new paradigm? So all that's at play. If Biden messes that up, he loses. If Biden doesn't mess that up and communicates it well, because he's got deliverables on the ground now, then he wins. I think the same thing goes with, the white young people are very interested in unions. That's really interesting, right? And the UAW win is a big deal, right? But young people are the Starbucks, Amazon, they very much, you see it with the teaching assistants in universities. You clearly see it on the West Coast with the screenwriters.
Right.
So there's a lot of interest. Now, is it just a coastal thing?
Well, you got the coasts that say one thing, but the heart of America, does it go that route? Yeah. And that's another huge question.
And I think the UAW thing makes it a very interesting issue because that's in the heart of the country, right?
Exactly.
I've never seen, since the 60s, I guess, when I was a little kid, unions be popular like this. The message had always been unions were basically wrecking the economy. They wanted money that they didn't deserve, and they were causing inflation and blah, 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 blah. And then we destroyed them, and that was a good thing, right? That was sort of the underlying toe. And then comes the UAW situation, and it's like the popularity was off the chain. Now, you really had the classic, it looked like upper management was greedy. It looked like the shareholders got too much. It looked like the unions were the good guys in 2008 and 9 and took the cuts and kind of got it restored, right? So, but I think the way he was masterful in sort of expanding it into the electric vehicle world and into non-unionized states. Whoa. So that's one of those intangibles that you've got to figure out. How does that get played out?
Right.
And then on the Republican side, I think the issue that's really the sleeper issue is crime. In addition to people being upset about inflation and food and gas, they're upset about crime.
Right.
I feel like the systems are out of control. They have a boogeyman in Black Lives Matter, which has become the escape vehicle for defund the police, which has become this is why we have the problem. So they have a nice narrative, right?
Yeah.
The solution set on that one, when people feel threatened, they accept extremes. You see that in Israel. You see that all over the world, right?
Right.
So we go back to a stop and frisk world where they go back to just arrest the bums and get them off the street. Now, the difference is as we see in every city, the bums are like 13 to 17. Like, what's up with that, right?
No, I don't know. I mean, we saw that in Philadelphia. I mean, that was it was how a beautiful city turns into what it turned into. I mean, it's crazy. And yeah, so that who does that? I mean, that's who not you don't. I wouldn't see them. That's not voters. That's just but the repercussions of what they do certainly affects voters. So that's one thing that I know people are looking at. I suddenly when you see the amount. The NRA and the gun issue suddenly has become a something where everyone's saying, you know what, how do I protect myself if I call 911 and I'm put on hold? That's not good. So I see exactly what you're saying along those lines is how do we protect ourselves and how do we, and then how do we vote? So yeah, when you say fear, holds us, it does, because now people are beginning to say, well, what am I going to do?
That's right. Now, on the other side of the coin of fear, because this is really gets into a white woman issue, and please don't, for your viewers, don't view me as just an ugly, sexist, racist. I just speak to constituents. Like I talked about
one thing, and just to and for the people that have seen you speak and stuff like that, I know you categorize everybody because those are groups and how they vote, and that's, again, elections matter, politics matter. So no, you're not a racist, you're not a chauvinist, guy that just looks. No, I know what you're doing is you put it together. So yeah, that's, and the people that are watching the podcast, that's definitely they take that. So yeah, you're good.
So for me, the crime issue really will be one of those things. Crime and abortion will be a big issue for white women, particularly suburban white women. Which one matters the most? Now, so you're sort of seeing this tested, ironically, right now in the Virginia delegate and state Senate races. So you've got a weird situation in Virginia. Virginia has basically become, I won't even say purple, it's become light blue, right? It's the one southern state that's become like the Northeast, right? And probably because it's the only southern state with northeastern suburbs, which is Northern Virginia, right? So it kind of, so they have a Republican governor who is not, who tries to be populist, but is not far right wing, but he barely won. He won on an education issue, right?
Right.
So there he's trying to exploit that, but most of his state Senate is Democratic right now, and his state House of Delegates, which is his equivalent of his House, is slightly Republican. He's trying to win a clean sweep. It's unclear whether that happens, but the funny thing is the amount of money that's spent on this race. So like the Washington media market is like the fourth or fifth most expensive in the country, right? It's like, what I mean? It's ridiculously expensive. So you have people actually running for House delegates in Virginia who barely touch the Washington region, running commercials. So then, meaning that there's just a flood of money.
Right.
There's two sets of commercials. The Republicans are running on crime, defund the police, you're not safe, you vote for the Democrat, he's going to have the criminal in your house, and then let them out on early bond, and you're going to be in trouble. The Democrats are running on, they want to take away every woman and girl's right to have an abortion. And so if you vote for them and they get in charge, they're going to follow the same thing that all those other southern states have done. So you're seeing this. I think this is a battleground for the nation on this social issues or non-economic issues. And so,
yeah, I can see that because it's grabbing your heart and just ripping it in two on two issues that are, again, near and dear. Do I vote, safety and education? Do I vote abortion? And back and, rights, women's rights and stuff. And yeah. And of course, Virginia being, almost a 50-50 type, like you said, almost a purple state. Yeah, it's going to come down to the, very, very nitty gritty, or do you end up with a, like a red house and a blue Senate, which, turns into, gee, you guys aren't getting anything done at all.
Very, very true too. And then watch to see, what was turnout this time as opposed to 4 years ago at this time? If turnout was down, then that means apathy is more important than anything, right?
Right. Yeah, because if you throw too much emotion into it, then like they throw their hands in there and they don't vote. which is, kind of seems contrary to belief. But the reality is, if you give them too much, and so they're like, I don't know, I'll let the popular people, they can decide. I'm not getting involved. I'm past that.
So that's our mini test ground.
Okay.
The benchmark for 2024. Watch that race November the 7th. And so that's basically, we could go on longer if you want, and I could get into more detail if you want, and I'm happy to do it. Or we could, you think this is at the level that people want to hear?
I think this is kind of gets people going, which is really kind of the good thing, because if they're really interested in all that stuff, they're going to call you, and then they're going to set you up, and they're going to have you come speak to them personally, because they want to know, which is always a good thing. This is a good tease. But no, because I know that, one, you come and speak every year to our group at the consortium, and that's a huge thing, because people, they always look forward to hearing it, because again, you open up people's minds and you get them to kind of think, well, what is it? And like I said, this whole concept you just talked about in Virginia is, if it's a prelim to what's going to come down in 2024, and what is it that we're thinking about now, and what happens, of course, between now and then is, of course, another big issue, because you've got three big issues. So you have me thinking exactly what you say. Look for those three items. Three. Yeah, that's it. Three. Make sure those three items, you look for those things that can completely swing an election one way or another. And are the three that we talked about at the beginning going to be the three, or are there going to be three new issues, which there probably will be, between now and then, especially as you get closer to Halloween 2024, that's going to, make everything change and make everything, suddenly look at it and go, oh my God, well, I have to vote this way now, and do that. And of course, you got the folks that are they're always going to vote blue, or they're always going to vote red, and there's no way they're going to change anything. And you're not going to change those people anyway. But there is a group in the middle that definitely, an independence, and it seems like a lot more people are saying, I'm an independent, and I'm thinking I'm going to vote this way because, and then it's ... And what's the ... And I think that's the $1 million question. And you seem to be, again, that's why we love to have you come speak at our functions, because you can see the ... where a lot of people can't. So that's what are those dots, and how do we make them work, and how do we make them suddenly make sense to everybody, so that you've got an idea and you see the clarity, where hey, that's why you make the big bucks, right?
I wish. Yeah, okay.
There you go. You don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck like our House Speaker. How's that?
That's true. That's a very interesting observation.
So we're there. So I will. If people have questions for you, they can contact us, or if you want them to contact you, I'll let you toss out your contact information.
Right. Fourth Advisors at 202-827-6596 is the number. It's easier than sending a text message or an email, or you can call Steve, and we talk all the time. So
yes, we do. And Larry, I want to say thank you for taking the time this morning, or this afternoon, depending on when people are watching this. So, but definitely taking your time, talking with us. Like I said, you always make this very interesting, and you get people to walk away and kind of scratch their head and go, I never thought of it that way. Politics is, it's a huge, it's a business, and it affects everything. It affects the credit and collection industry, obviously, the CFPB and everything that goes around that. But politics is politics, and one vote can make a difference on all this, on everything, and especially in today's world, because you see the House is almost equal on both sides. The Senate is almost equal on both sides. And I would imagine the presidential election will be very close along those lines too. So a few states will make a difference in how they vote and how they do. And then the question, of course, is who manages that better. And, whoever hires Larry, of course, is probably the person that'll win. So, hey, that's a whole nother issue. So hopefully somebody with a lot of money just saw that and said,
That's
what?
right.
I think he's right. I'm going to hire that guy.
If I leave you one final message, it's pretty simple. Follow, if you really are interested in this, try to hear somebody from the side that you're not on. So if you are on the Democratic side, pick up Fox News and listen to what people are saying. If you're on the Republican side, look at MSNBC. Read a newspaper article. Hopefully, it gave you enough information to inform you on how you critically read these newspaper articles and these polls, and then figure out one poll that you want to follow. And so don't get caught up in everybody's polls, because they'll be all over the map and they'll tire you out. So follow one. Last time it was real clear politics. We'll see who it is this time, who actually got it. Sort of what you could follow consistently. But that would be my advice. If you're a junkie in this area, those would be my 3 points that I would make.
Awesome. That's great. Well, like I said, thank you so much for doing this. And we'll definitely have you back to our shows, because, come September next year, you'll be the one that, can set us all straight, or at least have an idea, how crazy the world is and which direction are we headed at that point.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much. And we will be talking to you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thank you.